Hey everybody, it's Daniel. Welcome back to Spain to Go, the best podcast in the entire multiverse for all things Spain. I'm here with Lauren Aloise. Hello, Lauren.
Hi, Daniel.
Good to see you after all this time. I've got a little introduction to Lauren, which I will now read, and then we'll get into some questions. Lauren Alois is a food and tourism entrepreneur who founded Devour Tours in 2012, turning her love of food and travel into a thriving business. With tours in 18 cities in Europe and North America, the Devour Tours mission is to connect curious travelers to small family run food businesses and to share each city's unique gastronomy and local history with visitors. In 2021, Devour joined forces with Walks, known for iconic experiences and incredible storytelling. Now, as VP of Marketing for both, Lauren helps shape meaningful travel experiences and supports others in the industry who are building thoughtful, sustainable businesses. That all sounds pretty
That's
good.
a mouthful.
Yeah, let's talk about, well, first off, I wanted to know why you love Spain because if you've been here almost as long as I have, and I believe you have, then you must love Spain or have very few other options.
Yeah, I do love Spain. Why do I love Spain? I don't know. It's that's a complicated question for someone who's been here as long as you and I have, which I think is going on for me 16 years, which sounds crazy.
Yeah.
I love Spain. I think it's a great place to live. It offers a great quality of life if you embrace it. I think, I grew up in the United States, in Massachusetts, in a very small town. So certainly I'm not pretending to, it's not a direct comparison. I think a lot of people tend to compare their life in Spain, which is often in a city, to maybe where they grew up, which for me it was very rural. So I mean, even if I was living, I think, in a large American city, I'd be experiencing some of the similar kind of things that I just enjoy about being in a much more metropolitan area. So I live in Madrid. Previous to living in Madrid, I spent a couple of years in Seville when I first came to Spain. And I love the culture. The culture is about being out, about enjoying food and wine, about meeting with people and kind of having those communities. It's just something that I think was very different to my upbringing. And as soon as I arrived as a young 20-something, like it just clicked that this was a place that I felt really comfortable and really enjoyed living.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the middle of the desert, like quite literally in the middle of the desert, and moving to Madrid as a 21-year-old was a whole different experience, as you can imagine.
Yeah, exactly. We were so young when we moved too. We didn't experience young adulthood or adulthood in the United States. So in many ways, like Spain's what we know. So it's a hard question to kind of answer. But
Yeah, I mean, after, you're right, after so long, like it's just kind of life and you're not
yeah,
thinking about whether you love it every day.
yeah,
So you mentioned Madrid and Seville. Could you tell us a little bit about your Spanish origin story?
yeah. So I was in college. I always kind of wanted to study Spanish, not as my main degree, but as a second degree. I thought it was really useful to know Spanish living in the U.S. I was studying, my main degree was in hospitality and tourism management,
Wow.
and in the U.S. a lot of people working in that field speak Spanish. So I always had the intention of spending some time abroad. And in college, I spent half a year in Granada, Spain, and then the other half in Buenos Aires, Argentina. I loved it. I didn't necessarily plan to go right back or anything like that, but I was graduating. It was the economic recession of 2009 when I graduated college. There weren't many hospitality and tourism jobs entry level to be had that were very desirable. So I interviewed for a few, didn't get any, but they also didn't feel right. And so when a Spanish teacher sent an email about the auxiliar program, which is a program where people can go and be like a language assistant in Spain. I thought that was the perfect way to avoid the real world for another year and also learn more about Spain, its cuisine, its culture, things that were really interesting before I would head into some sort of path in the US. So I landed
Wow.
in Seville and very early on had the kind of typical story of meeting my now husband. We met for a language exchange just like I I think many other young people did at that time. And he was supposed to practice English and I was supposed to practice Spanish, and we hit it off, and we lived in Seville for a couple of years, and then after we got married, we decided to move to Madrid for more opportunities.
Wow. I didn't remember you being an auxiliar.
Yeah.
That was like most of the people listening to this, I think, are probably older. But the Auxiliares program puts like young graduates into Spanish high schools and middle schools and stuff, and just has them speak English to people
Yes.
as sort of an assistant teaching role, more or less.
Yeah, exactly. You're technically not supposed to teach, although it really does depend on the school you're placed at. But you're supposed to be just like the person speaking English in the classroom. You're not supposed
Yeah.
to know Spanish, and even if you do, you're supposed to pretend you don't, and just be that person that the kids could have a real conversation in English with. That's the theory, at least.
Yeah, I arrived before the Auxiliares program was really in full swing. So I kind of watched it, and I've watched how 80% of the Americans here just started out as auxiliares
Yeah.
in one way or another. Okay. And yeah, you met your husband at a language exchange. I used to do language exchanges, hoping to meet the woman of my dreams. It never really worked out, but you know,
I was naive. I just wanted to learn Spanish, but
yeah, yeah, it was there you go. But it has worked out for some people. That's pretty good. So you moved to Spain for the auxiliares thing. You moved to Madrid with your husband for more opportunities. And when we met, you had like a recipe blog,
yes, yes.
which like I started my grammar blog in 2010. I think it was just the crisis, and we all had a lot of free time and were worried about like how we were going to make money in the future. And I started a blog, you started a blog. We met. Do you remember exactly how we met?
Yeah, we met at I don't remember the name of the place, but it was near the Plaza de Toros, I think, in
Exactly.
Madrid, and it was a little kind of like traditional bar, and
Or,
we had a tapa, and I think you asked me about rabo de toro or something.
maybe I did. Yes, I was big into
My memory.
rabo de toro in
Yeah.
those days. Yeah, we met in some place near Manuel Becerra or Bentas in Madrid, and it was because we were both bloggers and we were going to meet anyway, I believe. So you had this recipe blog or food blog, Spanish Sabores. I think it's still there, right?
Yeah, yep, I've maintained it. I haven't really done much with it over the past, I'd say 8, maybe even longer, and the years all blend together. But I've always maintained it. It is one of the largest, if not the largest, Spanish recipe blog, recipes from Spain, in English. And so it's been a great kind of side project to have while Devour and the tourism world kind of took my main life. But yeah, it's great. I still send newsletters weekly, and I have a Facebook group for it, and I just love the idea of people falling in love with Spanish food, because especially in the US, especially when I left the US about 16 years ago, Spanish food wasn't very well known. I think it's come a long way since then, but because of, I think, immigration patterns to the US, we didn't see it. It wasn't something like Italian food or some of the other cuisines that just have a really strong presence in the US because of immigration. So a lot of people didn't know what it was, they were confused, or they thought it was difficult, or intimidating. And so I started by I always loved to cook, and part of my degree was cooking as well. But when I came to Spain and got married, and I learned a lot of Spanish recipes from my mother-in-law, and I wanted to share them, with the world. And at the time that we met, I had started the blog, but I had no idea like how you could ever earn money from that. I remember once someone asked me like, "Well, but what's your business?" And I was just like, I don't know. Does it have to be a business?
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of things have changed since then.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I remember that when we met, you had just started doing food tours. And I think it was you
Yes.
just taking people around Madrid. And, my thought was, well, that's silly. Why would somebody pay for a food tour? And you've been proving me wrong about that thought like every day for 15 years now. So,
Yeah.
congratulations. Why do people go on food tours? Because it's not really my style of travel.
I think, well, right now food tours have become a very popular type of tour. So when I started, there were no food tours as I had planned them in Madrid. A lot of European cities maybe had one food tour, maybe two, or none. And so it was really when they were taking off in this experiential travel vertical. And I think that's what it is, that people had always traveled to kind of check.
Sorry, can we clarify what a vertical is for the non-marketing people in the audience?
Sorry. Like yeah, like a section of travel. So yeah, a different, yeah, a section of the travel.
Okay.
So yeah, people had been traveling maybe in a much more check the boxes kind of way, and I think people realized that certain people were traveled because of different things, and the food traveler is I think people identified with that. I mean, we have to also think that in the years leading up to this, the Food Network and all of the food shows had about 10, 15, even 20 years of success, and it was just like people in the States, and the majority of our customers are and were from the US. They consume a lot of food content. They love cooking tools, and they like to understand what is behind the food and how is it made. And so the food tour was a way where you could tap into all of that, but you could also learn about the local culture, cuisine, so kind of more of the traditional tour experience in a way where you're going to get a little bit of information about the city, about the architecture, about certain things, but you're going to do that with food as kind of the leading force. And I think another great thing about food tours, if they're done well, is that it allows you as a traveler to taste like maybe 10 or 12 dishes in one 4-hour experience, because you're not ordering a full portion of those 12 dishes, and you're often getting, you know, special sizes or special treatment, a special tasting, and so you're able to optimize your time too, which I think for a lot of people, I don't think it's the main reason a lot of our people take our tours, but it's certainly an added value as you're really, you know, you're optimizing your time.
Yeah, I went on one of your food tours several years ago. I don't know if you remember, around Plaza Mayor in Madrid. And it's definitely good because you go to several places in the span of 2 or 3 hours. And so you get a lot of experiences and a lot of cuisine, so you can taste different things. It's also true that, like, I learned Spanish when I was in the US. I thought I knew Spanish, and I came here and I couldn't make anything out of a restaurant menu
Yeah.
because you don't learn what boquerones are in your Spanish class back there, or you learn how to say zanahoria and manzana,
Yeah.
and if you don't have those on the restaurant menu, you're pretty much out of luck.
Exactly. And what's funny is, well, I also learned a lot of Latin American Spanish growing
Oh
up,
yeah.
and the words for cuts of meat or different meats are very different. And so when I was studying abroad in Granada, and I mean, this was before smartphones, I didn't have a computer with me or anything like that, so I didn't have much access to information, let's say. And I also didn't speak great Spanish at the time. So I was there for 4 months, and it's really embarrassing to admit this, especially as the co-founder of a food tour company and a Spanish recipe blog. But I left after those 4 months thinking that Spaniards did not eat meat, because I never saw meat on the menu. Little did I know it was right there. It just wasn't the words that I was expecting. But yeah, I was convinced that there was
Yeah.
like no meat in Spain. So yeah.
There you go. Yeah, it can definitely be very confusing if you're not up to date on Spanish cuisine. Where I grew up, we had, of course, Mexican food, and we had Mexican food 3 times a week
Mm.
throughout my whole childhood. And I guess I kind of assumed that it was like one language, one cuisine. So I was very surprised when I got here and there was this no Mexican food, and it was all like different stuff that I had never heard of. So I think I remember your husband being from El Puerto de Santa Maria,
Yeah, in Cadiz.
or maybe the next town over. There's some pretty good regional stuff down there. What do you like down there?
Well, we were just down there actually. We generally go the last week of June, ever since having kids, because the kids get out of school, but the camps don't start till July, so we have about 10 days of either you take vacation or you wish you took vacation.
Yeah.
So we went down to El Puerto, which is where he's from, and I mean, the food there, it's awesome. I mean, the traditional stuff is very simple. A lot of fried fish, fried seafood in general. Little tortillitas de camarones are those tiny, tiny little shrimp that are fried in a batter whole. So you're eating every part of it, the shell, the tail, the whiskers, whatever. You don't want to look too closely. But
I
there's
like
like
those a lot.
in one of those little tortillitas, there might be like a good one, like maybe 50 of those tiny shrimp. And those are delicious. The sherry wines, I'm a big sherry wine lover. Gazpacho, salmorejo. I mean, salmorejo is from Cordoba, but of course you're eating a lot of it in any part of Andalusia. The papas aliñadas, which are Spanish potato salad with a bit of tuna, sometimes and red onion. Delicious. Yeah, we ate really well. We had a week of basically eating.
Great.
Another thing to try down there. The red tuna.
What is it?
The red tuna, the bluefin tuna.
Oh yeah. There's a place down there that's famous for the tuna
Yeah, well,
specifically.
Barbate is the town where a lot of the fishing happens in that region. And then, yeah, there's a few famous restaurants. One's called El Campero. It's a really famous tuna restaurant. You do a whole tuna tasting menu. I haven't been, but I've heard it's amazing, so it's on my list.
De Atún in Madrid is a place I like a lot. It's on Pontano.
Oh, I don't know it.
If you're into that kind of thing. So you started giving food tours, and if I recall, you were just you for a while, and you were thinking like, this is getting a little bit bigger than just me, and so well, what happened next?
Yeah, when I started, I didn't know where it would go. I won't pretend that I had like some business plan in hand and knowing that it would grow or scale like it did. But I knew I didn't go into it thinking I want to do this as my like day job for the next 20 years. So I was really open to just seeing what happened and going with the momentum. Luckily, there was momentum. I think from the beginning, it was a good time for my blogging skills that I built over the previous like year or so with the recipe blog and other little adventures had served me well for the business because the first thing I did was just put up a blog filled with information about eating in Madrid, about eating in Spain, and at the time SEO, which is how the search engines would find information and show it to people looking for things. At the time, that was a very good way to have people see you. That's no longer the case, but that's
Correct.
okay. So at the time, people would find my blog, the business blog Devour, when they were looking for like where to eat tapas in Madrid or where are the good markets in Madrid, those types of things. And a lot of people would see that, and then I think they would just book a tour. And I also had a booking system from the beginning, which now is just the standard, but at the time a lot of people were still like responding, going back and forth by email, and so I made it easy for people, and I saw bookings come in from the beginning. So I was guiding the tours myself, but really early on started looking for tour guides, and probably about 6 months later, one of the guides who started working for me, his name was James, we hit it off really well, and he ended up planning, at the time I was only doing mainly daytime tours of the markets and the shops and like restaurants and tapas, but very food in general. It wasn't just tapas. And he planned a tour in the evening called Tapas, Taverns, and History that was just tapas bars, but also mixed history into the equation and gave people like a mini history tour in between their food and drink. And that became really popular, and so we worked together in that way for about half year with some other guides, and then decided like, wow, this is going really well, we really enjoy it, could we do this in another Spanish city? And we decided to partner up, rebrand from Madrid Food Tour to Devour Tours and take it to Barcelona.
And this, by the way, this James fella is very well known out there.
Yes, people recognize him on the streets. It's always funny.
Yeah, this is James Blick. He's, I don't know, 40 times more famous than I am out there in the geary sphere. James is from New Zealand, and he has a YouTube channel called
And revealed.
Spain Revealed. Yeah. So he's been helping a lot of people like move to Spain recently. He's got a whole
Yeah,
thing around
yeah,
that.
exactly.
And he also, I don't know, I just follow him on Instagram, so I see that he does a lot of tapas stuff also still. And so, yeah, James is out there if you want to check that out. So you expanded to Barcelona, and then I remember like Sevilla and elsewhere.
Yeah, we ended up expanding to 8 cities in Spain. We thought at the time that we were going to just stay in Spain because I think both of us, our expertise and our love was for Spain. We were both married to Spaniards. We felt like even though we're not born and raised in Spain, we have a really good grasp on the country, the culture, the people, the language. We felt authentic, I guess you'll say, which was always, a concern in what we were representing. We went to 8 different cities, including places like Valencia, Santiago de Compostela, Granada, and Malaga. Those are the 4 that we no longer operate in. We're still in Madrid, Barcelona, Seville, and San Sebastian. And what we learned through trial and error and other ventures too, we tried like selling wine, and we had a wine tasting space, which I think you visited in Madrid.
Oh yeah, in Anton Martin. That was a
Yeah,
nice
yeah.
little
We did
space.
lots of different things. We just wanted to like express our love for Spain and its food through different tourism related, food related ventures, but nothing really worked except for the tours. So I think what we realized then is that we need our clients are people coming from the United States on a couple-week trip, and they want to incorporate some of these more experiential tours and activities into their schedules. They like the food tours. They like the fact that it doesn't feel like a traditional guided tour. You're really with like a friend for about 3 hours, and you're a small group of maybe like-minded might not be the best word, because certainly we got people from all over, and I'm sure not everybody is like-minded, but they all are adventurous when it comes to food, interested in culture, and so it's a really cool experience to put yourself there for 3 or 4 hours and kind of be out with friends, but they're not people you know for a few hours, and it's just something that a lot of people who come, they're not doing this back home. It's not something that's, they're not living in a huge metropolitan city and going to meetups all the time. So I think it's an experience that, while is just one of many things on many vacations in someone's life, we sometimes get feedback and people are like, this was the best thing I've ever done, and you're just like, really? Like, wow. But I think it's just that uniqueness of, I mean, if we think back when we were in our early 20s and we came to Spain and you went out with like Spanish friends for a night and tried a bunch of different tapas and stood up in restaurants, bars, and just had and drank while you were doing it, like, it is an experience that's unique, and if you haven't had it before, it's totally, yeah, there's an energy to it that is really special. So
Absolutely.
anyway, we realized that that's what we do well. We closed down in the smaller cities where we just didn't have enough American travelers to really support the business, and we decided to test the waters in other European destinations, but with the absolute kind of essential ingredient being that we would hire a local person in those cities as a full staff member, and to like be the James or myself. They didn't have to be born and bred in Paris, but they had to know, understand, and be connected with that culture, so that we were never like going in there and saying, well, I think this cheese shop looks good, let's put it on the tour. It's like, no, we needed someone on the ground who really understood that. And so in 2019 we did Paris, Rome, and Lisbon. Lots of mistakes, lots of stumbles, but overall things went well. In 2020 we were like ready to go. We were
Oh yeah.
doing London, Amsterdam, we were planning for other European cities, and we were also looking into the United States, but then the pandemic happened, so
And here we are.
here we are.
Are you still doing market tours? I used to see Devour in the Santa Catarina market
Yeah,
up here
we
in
are in
Barcelona.
Santa Catarina in Barcelona. That's the market that we generally go to.
It's such a nice market.
Gorgeous, and I mean the architecture, the roof, everything about it is just amazing. Unfortunately, it has gotten quite touristy since the time we started, when we were the only tour going in there, and we had a lot of, we were able to just grab things at the stalls and eat it right there, and since then, because of the influx of food tours, it's become a lot more regulated, and with good reason, because obviously we don't want tourists to be disrupting people while they're shopping. So
Have you been to Boqueria recently?
I have not. I've walked by it, but like I don't generally go to Boqueria. I don't not like Boqueria, and I know there's people who are really into Spanish food culture, Catalan food culture, who are like, Boqueria is the most amazing market. But I mean, yeah, hidden in between a lot of not amazing things.
I mean, I used to not like Boqueria for one reason, but it's just gotten so much worse because of the mass tourism. Like, there's all these places now selling like a cachopo burrito or something.
Oh gosh.
Like, they've just invented this thing and they're pretending like it's some typical Spanish thing. So you got these ladies standing there selling cachopo burritos, and just I'm sure there's still some, hardcore of old Catalan people selling real food,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's the real food is definitely hiding behind all of the silliness. So, well, that kind of is a lead in to the next question. We've heard a lot recently about like ethical tourism, and I know that you're into, local communities and family-run businesses. How is it that you're, supporting ethical tourism?
Yeah. Well, I think it all starts with that idea that the person that we have in each destination is again local, not meaning that they were born and bred there necessarily, though many are. That they really understand and have relationships with the people that they're working with, because we have, as a business, I'd say we have kind of three main stakeholders, apart from ourselves. We have the employees, who in this case I'm talking about the people in the destinations. We have the tour guides, who are not employees, but they're freelance tour guides, and this is their living and their livelihood. And we also have all of the people that we partner with. So for the food tours, that's the restaurants and the bakeries and the pastry shops. And what we're doing from day one, we always had it very clear that it has to be a win-win situation for everybody. Because a lot of food tours, the model was the model that I think existed in the US and still does, I think, with some tours, was that you would go in and like get free samples and so like you almost didn't maybe pay for the food as the operator, but you were introducing people to the shops. Now, maybe in a destination where a lot of the people on the tour are local, that could make sense because maybe they'll come back, maybe they'll take the coupon, maybe they'll buy things even when they're there. But obviously our clients are 99% tourists, and they're maybe going to come back while still in Madrid if they like loved it and they're like, we should have dinner here. That happens, but it's definitely not the norm. So we always said from the beginning, we want to make sure that it's just a win-win situation. We're paying the price for what we consume. That's not where we're getting the value from for the tour. It's coming from the fact that it's a tourism experience and people are paying for that. And then for the guides too, we want to make sure that we have guides who really feel like they are representing their city and their culture to the best of their ability with the routes that we put together. So I think that it starts with that. It starts with the respect for the place and the sense of place. And then as things have changed over the past 10 years or so, and the city centers have changed quite a bit, like there's been so many places, partners of ours even, that have closed down, that have been taken over by big chains, by just, shops selling bubble tea or batteries for cell phone cases or whatever. It's just trying our best to really keep highlighting through our communications and our marketing the good places that are left, whether they're stops on the tour or not. We also promote a lot of places on the blog or on our YouTube that we don't go to for whatever reason, many times logistics, but we want those types of places to thrive and survive. And we also try to empower the tour guide. Part of this has to come from them individually, but if we can give tools as well, we try to empower the tour guide to share the local places with guests, so that when the guest the next day is going out from their hotel and thinking like, oh, I really want a coffee, maybe they're seeing a Starbucks down the street, but they're like, nope, Carla yesterday told me about like 2 craft coffee shops that are within a 5-minute walk. They're just not going to be on the main drag because they can't afford the rents. So really we try to just think about it as tourism is complicated, because inherently you're getting on a plane. That is not a sustainable thing to do. But within how people travel, there's a ton of choices to be made. There's a lot of choices about how and where you spend your money and how that supports or does not support a city. And so we just try to give people the information that we have and the passion, share the true passion that we have as a group, so that they'll make choices that hopefully do support the local economy and the local people.
Yeah, there's an article this morning in La Vanguardia about how fewer Americans are coming this year, and it doesn't really make much of an attempt at explaining why. What I've seen from like the Facebook groups is that a lot of people are worried about these occasional anti-tourism protests.
Yeah, we've gotten there's been a lot of press, a lot of bad press about the protests and of course the squirt guns.
It's wild because there's like about one every year of these protests, and like people really love blowing it out of proportion, but it seems like such a minor thing.
I think it also goes back to the psychology of a lot of the more kind of typical American tourists who are coming to Europe, especially those coming for a first time or a second time or coming with a young family. There's a lot of emphasis, I think, on security. a lot of fear about security. I mean, we hear a lot about pickpockets in cities like Barcelona. We hear a lot about protests and the squirt guns lately. And like you said, for people who live here, it's like, you're like, wait, that's like once a year, or it's a minor thing. It's so easy to avoid, or you can have some, some best practices to not get pickpocketed. Knock on wood, I've been here for 16 years and I've never been pickpocketed. I will touch wood right now, because by saying that, I feel like I'm tempting fate. But it's just there's a lot of it's a super safe country, Spain, of course, and most of the places we operate. But yeah, there's a lot of fear out there, and I'm in those Facebook groups as well, and a lot of people saying like, oh, is it safe to be in Europe right now, and all of those things. So I think that is definitely a factor in this year's travel decisions. Also, I think the economy is affecting people's kind of liberalness with spending money and taking a big trip.
The exchange rate, we kind of got used to the exchange rate being approximately like 1 to 1 for the dollar and euro. And it was never that way before. But the last year or two, it's been pretty favorable for the dollar. And so now that it's going in the opposite direction, people are also like worried about that, I think.
Yeah, it's a big expense to come over here. And I think, yeah, I mean, again, the numbers that we've seen, the reports that we've seen, show that a similar amount of people are coming over right now. But when you start to be in these Facebook groups and you start to listen, it does feel like there's people who are second guessing their trips, or maybe not going as big as they originally had planned.
Okay, but in your opinion, do you have to worry about being squirted by a squirt gun if you're in?
No, no,
Not at all. Like I would
not at
have
all.
to, I don't
Not
know. People, I think, also maybe get advisories from the embassy where they're like anti-tourism protest in Malaga
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something
There's
like that.
advisories and the like level of I forget what it's called right now, but you get like if we're at level 2 or level 1 for travel.
Oh yeah, like travel alerts for different
Yeah, and
locations.
I know some of them have gone up, but it's coming to Spain, to Italy, to France, to Portugal. It's great. It's great to come.
Oh yeah.
I personally would recommend coming in the fall because it's nicer weather. But yeah, come on over.
Yeah, nicer weather and sort of more relaxed without the summer rush. Yeah, definitely would have to like go all the way across town to a specific place at a specific time if I wanted to see somebody protesting against tourism. And yeah, for the most part, it's not going to be an issue in my life at all. Let me see what else I got here. Oh, well, you kind of left us there with the pandemic. I think things changed for Devour Tours around that time.
Yeah, yeah. So as I said, we went into 2020 with tons of momentum, really exciting plans, and then when it all came to a halt, and tourism, of course, was one of the kind of first and very severely affected industries. It was a big kind of, oh my goodness, like a point of reckoning, like what do we do, and will we even exist, and was all this hard work for nothing? And so all these things are swarming around me and James's, and I'm sure others' heads, when we got a call from a friend of ours who owned the company Walks, which is a walking and attractions tourist company that started in Italy, but very similarly had expanded throughout Europe, and they'd already made the jump into the US a couple years prior. And so our friend Steven, he gave us the good news that they'd been acquired by an American company called Hornblower Group. Now, I had not heard of Hornblower, though many Americans had, because they run the ferries for things like the New York City Ferry, they do the ferry to Alcatraz, to Statue of Liberty, so they had a lot of these big ferry contracts, and a lot of other businesses, and they were looking to get into the world of tours and activities, and so they acquired Walks. And from there, Steven said, well, what about a food tour joining kind of the family? Would Devour be interested in that? And it was weird because it was not something that we had thought about really seriously at that point. We felt like we had so much more work to do on our own before we would ever think about selling or the next step in that way. But the pandemic, that made everything change, really. And I think for both of us, it was an amazing opportunity to partner with a like-minded company under the umbrella of a really solid big company, and have within that still the freedom to kind of build what we were building, obviously a little bit different, but more or less the freedom to continue onwards with that momentum. but not with as much risk, not with the question of, oh gosh, in 2 years will everything be gone because we don't know what's going to happen when travel rebounds. Now travel did rebound, and it rebounded very well,
Yeah.
but it was really nice to be kind of supported at that point and be under this umbrella and be with another company that had a very similar culture and ethos to ours, which was Walks, and rebuild together. So since the end of 2021, I've been part of Walks Devour under Hornblower, and we've just been rebuilding, but also after kind of that year and a half of rebuild, we started just creating again a new future for both brands, hoping to be the kind of world's best tours and activities operators.
There you go. Um, I've always I've always pitched Walks because I went on their Prado tour. My wife said, by the way, that it was one of the best experiences she's ever had.
Oh,
The early morning Prado tour at 9 in the morning, they let you into the Prado and you're there for an hour or so before anybody else comes in. Very good experience. I have actually some links in case anybody wants to see this stuff. I have affiliate links. I'm part of your affiliate program, by the way. I don't know if you know this.
I do.
You can go to expatmadrid.com/devour for all of Lauren's food tours. You can go to expatmadrid.com/walks and take a look at the walking tours. Walks does, I think, something here in Barcelona also, right?
Yeah, so we have in Barcelona quite a few experiences. We have like a Barcelona day tour that's all of the main attractions. We have our complete Gaudi where you go to Casa Batlló or Casa Vicens, and you also go to Parc Güell, you go to the Sagrada Familia. So yeah, we have a variety of things. In Barcelona, our kind of early one, we would love to do early Sagrada Familia. It hasn't been possible yet, but we will never stop asking. But we do an early Casa Batlló, and that's cool too because while it's not as known as, of course, the Sagrada Familia, just being in a Gaudi building before anyone else is in there, especially in that building because it's actually really small. Like it's kind of, I can't imagine living there because it's like the architecture is quite claustrophobic in my opinion. So when you're in there alone with 10 other people, you're like, okay, this is great. But if you're in there after that with the crowds of people, it's just like it's completely overwhelming. So that's really cool. And yeah, of course, we have our food tours in Barcelona as well.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't been into Sagrada Familia. I haven't done any of the Gaudí stuff here in Barcelona.
Right, well, we have to get you on that tour. You have to
I don't
test me.
know. I feel like that's the kind of thing that tourists do. And since I came here originally, like as a person who's living here now, I just never did it. It never, seemed like,
I didn't tour the Royal Palace till I started working with
yeah.
Walk. Like,
If you're living in Madrid, you're not walking around the Royal Palace on,
yeah, well, yeah, it just like it always felt like another like, do I really have 2 hours to do like go to the Royal Palace? And I think I saved it for if people were in town, but then we didn't end up doing it. And then so finally, obviously, went on a walks tour here in Madrid, our Madrid in a Day, which includes the Royal Palace, and I was blown away. I mean, I thought it was really interesting and really cool and really beautiful. It was much more than I had expected, to be honest. And so yes, you must go into the Sagrada Familia. I am going to have Hallie email you after this call.
okay. I will say, I went to Mass in the crypt at Sagrada Familia because I looked into this, and you can actually get into these, cathedrals and basilicas that you would normally pay money for. You can get in for free if you just go to Mass. At 8 or 9 in the morning on weekdays, they have Mass in the crypt at Sagrada Familia. And I think on weekends, they actually do it in the whole, main nave principal, whatever you're supposed to call this in English, of Sagrada Familia. So that's an option too if you're into, religion in a way. The links then are expatmadrid.com/devour for food tours and expatmadrid.com/walks for, unique experiences, often on foot through different places. What do you think, Lauren, that the future of Spanish tourism looks like? Because we used to all say that Spain was kind of this low-cost tourist destination, and we wanted to get like a more discerning high-end tourist in here. And I used to always point out that that's only going to happen if the price of everything goes up. And what do you know? The price of everything went up.
Yes.
Nobody's complaining about low-cost tourism anymore. Where do we go from here?
Well, I think there's a huge opportunity there. I think I've seen Mallorca do this really well, like the positioning of Mallorca, which I suppose I don't think Americans really had this thought about Mallorca, about it being more of like a cheap tourism destination, but certainly the Brits, I think, did. A lot of like the lower cost and all-inclusive kind of stuff was out there, but over the past decade, the hotels that have come about, the restaurants, it's just all upscale, not necessarily pretentious, butler service with white gloves, but very, very nice, and definitely like an affluent traveler demographic that they're going for. And I think that's a possibility. I think Madrid's also done a decent job with that. Like, we're a huge city, so we attract a bit of everything, and we're also a pass-through city. But with our museums and our kind of cultural offering, I think it draws a very cultural traveler, which is generally in line with an affluent traveler. And so there's an opportunity here to expand the offerings, to lean into trends like wellness, or people who want, more experiential travel than just bucket list, and to really offer a variety of things. And I'm always interested in how we can push more people outside of those main destinations, even if it's just a smaller like nudge in, okay, you're gonna go to Barcelona. We're not gonna, you should go to Barcelona, and if it's your first trip to Spain, of course you're gonna go to Barcelona. But maybe it's like convincing people to spend a little bit more time in the region and do something in the region and not just the city. Maybe it's in just introducing one lesser known city or destination per trip. It's not going to be an overnight change, but I think there's opportunity there.
Oh yeah, I bet. Like, I'm not saying you need to do this or anything, because I know what it's like when people are like, "Hey Daniel, here's how you should run your business." But if you could like get people on a bus or a train down to Vilafranca de Penedès or something like that, do the Catalan wine regions, that's like great.
I do a tour. It's
Yeah,
there.
do you have one?
Montserrat and Cava, and so you go to Montserrat and then you go
You
to,
have a Montserrat and Cava tour.
yeah, it's
Oh
really
damn.
cool. It's really nice.
Expatmadrid.com/devour, I think, is where we would sign up for that one. That sounds pretty good. Yeah, the wine region down there is where they make cava, which, in case people are unaware, is, Spanish champagne. Champagne has to be from a specific region of France,
Yeah.
and if it's not from that region of France, then it is officially not champagne. But cava is, would you say it's comparable to champagne?
Yeah, I mean, it's made the exact same way. The differences are mainly that the land is different. The grapes are, because of the sunshine and the Mediterranean climate, we've got a bit of a different situation over here, and we've got more grapes, and they're better kind of, not better quality, but we just have an abundance of good quality grapes. Where in Champagne, the weather makes it much more difficult. Therefore, the prices are higher, the land, and also the marketing. Like, Champagne is a brand, and it gets a premium, where Cava is not a brand, and there's a lot of mass-produced Cava, so it's got a kind of full spectrum of what you can find. But quality for money, Cava is a fantastic choice, and when you're in Spain, you should be drinking Cava.
Yeah, Spanish people at Christmas or whatever, they're not drinking champagne for the most part. It's mostly cava.
What I loved actually about Barcelona is that you will find people in the old man bars, as we say, having a glass of cava at like 9 a.m. with their entrepan, their little sandwich, and it's just like, oh, I like that start of the day, like a mid-morning sandwich and glass of cava, like sure.
Yeah, this is when I got pareja de hecho with, now my wife, but at the time just my pareja de hecho. This is kind of what we did. We went to the notary and then we went out for cava at 9 in the morning. And, it's something you can do in Barcelona. Nobody thinks it's weird. So, yeah, there's definitely a lot of promise for Spanish tourism outside of the low cost. I don't know if most people in the US would even be aware of the low cost like British package tourism, but it was definitely a thing for the longest time, where you would be some, British person from Plymouth or whatever, and you would just go to a travel agency, and for £500 or whatever, they would put you on a plane to Mallorca. They would have you in a hotel, with probably room and board.
It's sun and sand, just like I think a comparable in the US would be Cancun, or at least where I grew up, people would go to Cancun, they'd wear a bracelet, and they wouldn't leave the hotel facility, and it's like, wow, okay, well, you didn't really go to Mexico, you went to that hotel. And I think it was something similar, or it still is. There's certainly still that's there. But I think the high quality tourism, I think Spain's, in general, a lot of Spanish regions have taken a bet on that. I think that the country, because it's a cultural treasure chest, like it does attract cultural travelers who, it's again, tend to be also going into the affluent traveler group a lot of the times. And so there's just opportunity here. People, I think, are willing to pay for really good quality and the story behind it. And so we see
Yeah.
that a little bit with like olive oil and the brands that have come out, the winery, people who have taken over their family vines or their family olive trees that was mass producing for many years and just selling everything to a co-op. The younger generations have taken it over. They put love and brand behind it and told the story, and there's a lot of success stories there. It's still a minority, but it's shifting.
Man, I wish we could talk about marketing because I don't know. I used to think about this quite a bit, like the Spanish brand and how Spain was not doing very well at marketing itself for a while. It seems like that's shifted quite a bit.
I think again, minorities, but it's we're showing a lot more of that, and there's a lot of desire for that.
A lot of it is also just, yeah, tourists from the US, isn't it? That rather than, because people from the US don't need to fly all the way over here to go to the beach.
No,
So they come here and they want to do something else. And they, generally have more money than your average European person to spend.
yeah.
That's quite a thing. So, well, what's next for, I don't know, Devour and Walks? What's next for the VP of marketing of these companies?
Oh gosh, it's always interesting. No, I mean we are our philosophy at the moment is really to focus on what we're doing well. Like we're not trying to we're kind of past the phase of when I was in 2019 and I think Walks, maybe around the same time or a little bit earlier, we're really excited about expanding and going here and there. It's like we still have those thoughts, but for now it's like we're in these incredible destinations and it's like what you say, how do we raise the bar for what we're offering, especially like when we first began. Even Walks was some of the first tour operators for the official operators for the Vatican, for these enormous attractions that were hard to kind of get into and figure out on your own. And Devour were some of the first food tours. Now, I mean, we're within a million competitors, and so how do we keep our promise to quality, to responsible tourism? How do we keep doing something a little bit different? So kind of a lot of the questions you asked are on my mind, and we're just trying to base ourselves in that high quality, the responsible tourism, and also in being innovative and trying to as we go forward.
Sounds good. So you're at Spanish Sabores, which would be Spanish flavors if you're translating. You're at Walks Tours and Devour Tours, which I've mentioned the link, expatmadrid.com/devour, expatmadrid.com/walks, or you can put those things directly into Google and you will find them. Anywhere else that people can follow you or
Yeah.
reach out if anybody's super curious?
Yeah, my Instagram's not too active these days, and that's Spanish Sabores, the blog for recipes for sure. And then for me personally, I think where I'm most active, though I won't say very active, would be LinkedIn. So just be Lauren Aloise on LinkedIn.
Lauren Aloise, Aloise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any famous last words here?
No, I hope that we get to share another tapa soon somewhere. I know now that you're in Barcelona, it's a little harder, but if you're ever in Madrid, let's go back to our roots and go to the old man bar near the bull ring and have a.
Yeah, those bullring days. Yeah, I was thinking Barcelona was going to be like a very temporary, thing, but it isn't. So here we are. Well, thank you for being on the show. Once again, Walks Tours and Devour Tours for, various destinations around the world. Thank you, Lauren, for taking the time, and we'll talk another day.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great to be here. Take care.
Bye.